In this tutorial, I am going to be painting these really fun, loose watercolor seashells. There's some ink detail. These are for World Watercolor Month prompts. My list is based on a nautical theme, so I thought this would be a fun exercise to start the month. This is the watercolor set I'm going to be using today by Kuretake, and I'm only going to pick out 3 blues from this set. It's the Ultramarine, this one here was the Cerulean Blue, and also this very light one, if I can get to it, is the Horizon Blue. Along with these 3 colours, I also have this set, again by Kuretake, of pearl colours, and this blue one I think would fit in very well with the seashell vibe. It is called Pearl Cobalt Blue, and I think it's going to sit very nicely with the other blues that I've chosen for the seashells. The first thing we're going to do is create a really light wash with the lightest shade I've got here, which is my Horizon Blue, and I want to create basically shapes of the shells, not accurate shapes, just following my reference here. I'm just going to show you a few basic things here at the top of my page. I'm using my normal Moleskine watercolor sketchbook. It's going to be fine once we introduce the darker shades. I know it looks very formless, but we are going to be doing a few little tricks with this, so don't worry too much about it. A little one here, and another sort of scallop shape here. So now we can start introducing some of the other blues. Let's start off with Cerulean Blue. You can see that the colours are already merging. Some areas of this are dry and some are still very wet. Before it gets too dry, I must drop in my darkest blue, which is the Ultramarine.
One of the things that I hear most often from followers and students is your watercolours look so effortless and unforced, and they'll often add things like, I really want to loosen up, or I'd love to be able to paint more freely. It's something that many artists struggle to achieve. It's probably that combination of fresh and free-flowing way of working, but somehow we are getting stuck with fiddly details and perhaps a timid approach.
These are very nearly dry, and I am looking at the textures and the backflows that have formed in the meantime as the pigments mix, and that's one of my favourite parts. I just love seeing what effects have been created. You probably think, oh, these look pretty formless and shapeless, but the magic is going to happen when we start adding the ink. This is the ink I'm going to be using today. It's Ultramarine by Winsor, and this is the pen holder, again Kuretake, and it's their Saji nib. It's meant for cartoonists, but I think it gives a lovely point and line quality. Before we start, I want to show you I had an ink splodge straight away, very big one. I got it all over my hands. Let's start drawing some of the details in. If you know my work, you know I'm not like doing outlines. All I'm doing is just picking out details, and I think in this particular seashell I might have to introduce a white gel pen just to pick out some of the highlights. A lot of the darker details are on this side, and the opening of the shell is about here. Again, I might have to add a bit of white line just to help with the contrast, help with the information.
For me, painting loosely is a pretty natural approach, but it wasn't always the case in those early sketchbooks, and it's something that I've taught myself. That is the good news. There are many elements of a loose technique that can be taught. The key word is simplification. The more you simplify what you do, the more it frees your mind to concentrate on staying in the present and not thinking too far ahead. Staying with that theme of painting loosely as a state of mind, sometimes you might have to psych yourself up and consciously think beforehand about a loose approach. The best way to describe it is not trying to capture a photographic representation. It's just an impression or an essence. And once you get hold of this idea, you can let go of the expectations of perfection and focus on the mood or the colours and a sense of the subject matter in front of you. Another really good tip that I want to share is painting with large brushes. I started off painting with probably a number 4 size brush, and now I'm painting with probably what amounts to about number 14 round brush. It is much easier to loosen up if you're using a large brush because you're learning to let go of control, and a large brush makes you focus on painting in large shapes and discourages you from painting details. So this helps you to focus more on shapes and create that fluidity. Talking of paintbrushes, it's also really useful to hold your brush by the tip of the handle. Don't hold it like a pencil. By holding the brush at the tip, it keeps you from painting in small, detailed shapes and strokes and wanting to add all that fiddly stuff. You can see in this video that I've limited my colour palette. This is another trick I use because the fewer the colours, the fewer decisions you have to make about your paint, which leaves more room in your brain to think of other things.
I don't want to add too much. I'm using a very small brush, bearing in mind I'm still going to be going in with a white gel pen later on. I just want to see what happens. Oh, this is really, really nice. And the ink that I used was permanent, which means that I can paint over it.
Another point worth making is don't think of each piece as a masterpiece. That's one of the hang-ups that people has, I think, that every piece, every sketchbook page has to look amazing, and that's absolutely not true. Some of my best pieces have been when I've just been playing around and experimenting, just like today.
This is my white jelly roll pen by Sakura, and I'm going to use this particular white pen to pick out some of the highlights in these shells. So it's just going to be line work. I'm not going to be filling in massive areas of white. That's all I use these white pens for, just to pick up little details. And again, it's just adding that extra layer of information. You can see the difference it's made there already. And if we go,
painting isn't a collection of masterpieces. It's learning to enjoy the act of painting, the process of painting, and not that end result. This comes into the territory of being fearless. Don't fear failure, because if you aren't failing, then you are not learning anything new. If you think you've made a little mistake, it's something that you can learn from and nothing more. Going back to the need for results, it's something that is really difficult to let go of, because if you're always painting for results, you're not going to enjoy the process. And I keep saying this, it should be a process orientated activity, the results will come from the process of painting and learning and enjoying the fun, positive results. I've just put some finishing touches to these shells. This area that I'm showing you now had a bit of negative space, so I used some of the pearlescent wash to fill up that space to make it look like splashes really. And I think overall I adore what has been created. There is a real vibrancy and energy about it, and I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I really hope that you'll enjoy creating your version of these seashells with the watercolour and the pen work.